When we think about moving abroad or expanding a business, we usually look straight at the map. We look for a massive landmass or a top-tier GDP, assuming those numbers automatically lead to a better life or a stronger market. But there's a factor that often gets overlooked: the sheer number of people sharing that land. Population scale sets the physical and economic boundaries that every resident and business has to navigate. We are looking at a vast spectrum of human organization, ranging from sovereign states with as few as 800 residents to massive demographic engines holding over 1.4 billion people. Choosing the right environment starts with identifying a core priority: unmatched global opportunity, concentrated stability, or geographic space. This choice forces a trade-off. On one side, concentrated agility, small, hyper-specialized states. On the other, scaled influence, massive, complex meganations. Ultimately, the headcount of a nation sets the baseline for your daily experience, influencing the level of competition you face and the literal room you have to move. We start at the extreme low end of the spectrum with the microstates. These are sovereign nations operating with populations ranging from a mere 800 up to about 680,000 residents. When your human capital is this limited, it's difficult to build a diversified economy. Instead, these states survive by becoming highly specialized hubs, focusing on niche sectors like religion, history, or boutique finance. Take Vatican City. With around 800 permanent residents, this entire independent state operates essentially as a single specialized headquarters. But that specialization requires an absolute reliance on neighbors. A microstate like this depends on the surrounding country for its basic defense, power grid, and supply chains. For a nation like Tuvalu, with 11,000 people living on a thin strip of coral in the Pacific, that dependency becomes a logistical challenge. Without a large immediate neighbor, geographic isolation becomes the defining feature of daily life. However, if you scale up to 680,000 residents and secure a strategic border, the dynamic changes. Luxembourg sits right at the heart of Europe's financial and political centers. By leveraging this specific population size in a prime location, they've managed to create one of the highest concentrations of wealth and political influence per capita in the world. Choosing a microstate means accepting a geographically confined reality. In return, you gain a level of specialized stability and concentrated wealth that larger nations struggle to replicate. Our next category shifts to a much larger scale. These are the mid-sized sprawlers, nations with 400,000 to 41 million people living on massive landmasses. These nations possess millions of square miles of land that is effectively empty. On paper, it looks like a life of total geographic freedom. The immediate benefit is obvious. Residents have direct access to pristine nature and unique wildlife. It is a lifestyle defined by a low-stress, environmental aesthetic. In New Zealand, the human footprint is tiny compared to the physical landscape. With just 5.3 million people, the wilderness is the dominant feature of the country. However, building infrastructure across those huge distances is incredibly expensive. To stay connected to the global economy, these mid-sized populations end up clustering in very specific regions. Canada has 41 million people, but the vast majority live in a narrow strip right against the southern border. To maintain a modern lifestyle, most residents in this sprawling country actually live in hyper-dense urban centers like Toronto. In these nations, having access to vast space doesn't mean you live in it. To overcome the cost of such huge distances, the population has to cluster in cities, meaning your daily reality remains urban and high density. Finally, we reach the mega-state engines. These are the rare nations that manage populations between 340 million and over 1.4 billion people. At this scale, sheer market size becomes your greatest asset. These demographics create the world's most powerful economic and technological engines because they have enough internal demand to be self-sustaining. The United States uses its 340 million people to sustain globally dominant hubs like New York City, where the sheer volume of human capital allows for a level of economic output that smaller nations can't match. But managing this many people is a massive logistical burden. It leads to heavy bureaucracy, constant infrastructure strain, and significant inequality between different regions. In India, managing 1.4 billion people leads to an intense, high-competition environment. Daily life involves navigating extreme density and a constant struggle for resources. Yet that same scale allows for unprecedented projects. China's 1.4 billion residents provide the human capital needed to build entire cities like Shanghai, creating an infrastructure machine that reshapes the global economy. Life in a megastate gives you access to the world's biggest opportunities, but the cost is a daily life spent navigating hypercompetition and complex infrastructure. There isn't one perfect country size. There are only different demographic environments, and each one requires you to make a specific compromise. Map these trade-offs using population size against physical space. Specialized professionals valuing exclusivity belong in the microstates. If you prioritize environmental quality and literal space, mid-sized sprawlers are your best option. And entrepreneurs needing a massive market belong in a megastate. Think about your current life phase or your business goals. Which of these demographic trade-offs actually aligns with your strategy? Let me know your priority in the comments.